One of the most damaging things we can do for our bodies is sitting, and sitting for large periods of time. Unfortunately, most of us do spend huge amounts of time sitting. In fact, for many of us, sitting is how we spend the majority of our time, and this has a number of serious and negative effects on our bodies. Sitting for long periods causes tight hip flexors, weak glutes, a weak core, poorer breathing, tight hamstrings, rounded shoulders, tight pecs, stiff neck, a whole host of other issues. Fortunately, by using corrective exercises, there are lots of ways we can address these problems. And using one exercise in particular, we can tackle a whole host of these issues in a single go. That movement, of course, being the crab. So the crab is an exercise that exists across many different training disciplines, many modalities. You have the crab pose from yoga, you have crab from animal flow, which involves slightly less hip extension. Of course, it's also a part of just movement training more generally. You have similarities in capoeira. You have the crab toe touches, often used as a warm-up by gymnasts. And the crab in its more general form is often used in functional training and corrective exercise to help address a lot of movement red flags. I love it when you see this, a different movement pattern reoccurring in different disciplines, just because it has so much clear benefit for the human body. But we often don't see it in the gym. It's not something you see many gym bros using, and I do think that's something we should change, because it particularly has benefits for anybody who's a little bit front heavy perhaps, or a little bit stiff. And I recommend you try it, because as soon as you try the crab pose, and especially the crab reach for me, you feel it, and it feels excellent. It feels great. It's like the kind of stretch that makes you go, ah. And to me, that's a sign that you probably really need it. Okay, so first of all, you're gonna sit down on your big old butt. The grass is slightly dewy and wet here, but we're gonna make do. Then what you're gonna do is put your hands by your side, put your feet on the floor so your knees are up, and then you're simply gonna push your waist up towards the floor so that your pelvis is trying to touch the sky. Fortunately, the positioning is quite straightforward and simple. You wanna make sure that your wrists are directly under your arms, which are directly under your shoulders. That's going to place the minimum amount of strain on your wrists. At the same time, you want to make sure that your legs, your shins are perpendicular to the ground, so you're creating a right angle. Same thing for your arms. And then you'll want your torso to be a straight line, parallel with the ground. And ideally what we're going for here is a straight line directly from the shoulders all the way down to the knee. Now I'd like to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, NordVPN. So NordVPN is a VPN, that means a virtual private network. Basically, it allows you to surf the web in a way that makes it harder for people to see your activity or to identify your IP address. That's because it lets you reroute your traffic via a server located elsewhere, so that if someone were to spy on you, all they'd see was that you connected to that server. All your subsequent activity would be obfuscated. This of course makes browsing the web much safer, also means you can spoof your address. So if you want to look like you're browsing from another location, for example so that you can access region-locked content on sites like Netflix, this is a great way to do that. You can watch more programs wherever you are in the world, whilst at the same time getting peace of mind knowing that your data is safe. NordVPN also comes with a host of other features, including Double VPN, which offers double encryption. If you go to nordvpn.com/thepioneer, then you can get a big discount on a 2-year plan, plus an additional month. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and now on with the show. So of course the key feature of the crab pose is to engage the glutes, contract the glutes, and make sure that you're really rotating the femurs and pushing the pelvis up towards the sky. You want to do this without arching your lower back. And the reason this is so incredibly beneficial is because this is exactly the opposite of how we sit. When we're sitting in the office, often what we're doing is we've got our hips flexed, we're bent over, hunched over, and as a result we get tight hip flexors, we deactivate our glutes, we struggle to engage them, meaning in some cases we can get a permanent anterior pelvic tilt so that our pelvis is tilting forwards, giving us that Donald Duck butt. At the same time, we'll often bend over in that way and pick things up from the ground by bending the lower spine instead of by engaging the glutes. Often we can't engage the glutes properly when running, when jumping, so this is a great antidote to that. And this nice isometric hold is going to give you the opportunity to really ingrain those movement patterns as you focus on engaging the glutes and contracting there, whilst at the same time maintaining that neutral lower back. In terms of your neck position, ideally you want to try and keep that neutral as well, so straight line. You can tilt it forward slightly. We don't really want to be tilting it all the way forwards because that's going to be creating more neck flexion, bending yourself more forwards, which is exactly what we're trying to counteract. Because again, if you're at the phone a lot or at the computer a lot, you're going to be bending your neck forwards like that. It's not the end of the world, it's not going to instantly cause you damage like some people would have you believe, but if we're trying to reinforce positive movement patterns, that ain't one, so it makes sense to try and keep the neck nice and neutral. But if you're struggling to get into that fully opened up hip position, what you can do is to drop it slightly. Now it's going to look more like that crab position from Animal Flow. They also point their fingers back. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But by just relaxing the hips slightly more, you make it into an easier position that's easier to hold, but at the same time, you're still engaging those glutes, you're still contracting those glutes, and that's still going to give you the opportunity to strengthen them so that eventually you can get into that nice opened out position. Think about this, it's very similar to a hip thrust. The difference being that instead of resting your upper body, your shoulders on a bench, you're instead resting them on your shoulders. It's not only going to involve the upper body, making it into a great bang for your buck exercise, but it also slightly increases the range of motion, takes you close to that end range strength where you're pushing against your body's own resistance. Don't push hard and cause an injury, but just gently try and find those limits and get into a position where you can comfortably challenge them. Also, what you can also do is to just practice that as a range of motion, as a hip thrust. You can just relax the hips and then push them up to the sky. That's going to look something like this. That then also brings us to a number of great other variations on this movement. Of course, you've got the crab walk. Oh, hey babe. Nice sweater. You can do this with the hips completely extended, or you can do it in that more relaxed position, a la animal flow. By moving through this position, you're teaching yourself to stabilize the core and activate the glutes while also moving the body, which is of course what's important. It's also just a great form of strength endurance training, a great conditioner, a great warm-up, and it looks like this. There's a lot of dogs at this park. Do you know how to do the crab reach? The mummy's over there. Great thoracic rotation. Another great one is the crab toe touch. And what you're going to be doing here is getting into that crab position, then reaching one hand forwards to touch the opposite foot. This is another great stability and core challenge. It's anti-rotational because you're bracing the core to stop yourself twisting either to the left or to the right. You've only got 2 points of contact with the ground, meaning you need to create a lot of stability to do this correctly. And at the same time, there's a slight mobility challenge there too, as you're trying to touch your foot and touch your hand. Really would work well in a high intensity functional training circuit. Now the other big feature of this position, of course, is opening up the chest. And in that position, you're going to feel a nice stretch on the chest. Perfect again for if you spend a lot of time hunched over like this, typing with your pecs flexed and in a shortened position. If you want to take this a little bit further, what you can do is to point your fingers out behind you, which is actually how the animal flow position looks as well. We can do this in order to externally rotate the shoulders, opening them up even more and opening up the chest even more. But of course, this also puts a bit more pressure on the shoulders and on the wrists, so you want to ease into that position gradually by turning your hands more and more out behind you, if that's a feature that you're looking to take advantage of as well. And you want to keep those arms nicely locked out, and as you drive and rotate them into the ground, you're also developing that straight arm strength. This protects your elbow from injury during movements like the deadlift. It's also perfect for developing the kind of strength you need for moves like the planche, L-sit, etc. Then there's another one I've been playing around a lot with lately. That's the crab reach. What you're going to do here is just simply reach over with one arm, and then what you're going to do is push the arm over the opposite shoulder, and as you do, follow it with your gaze so that your head is tracking the movement, stretching out the obliques, the quadratus lumborum, and building that thoracic rotation that so many of us are missing. I talk a lot on this channel about the importance of rotation. For everything from throwing, to running, to wrestling, to throwing a punch, to moving heavy objects, we always rotate the core, and yet so little of what many of us do in the gym involves rotation. Place your weight onto one side. You might need to slightly rotate the hands to get comfortable. You're going to lower your hips and then push through the hips, push through with the arm over the opposite shoulder, and as you do, follow that hand with your eyes so that you're tracking it and creating that really nice thoracic rotation. You should feel the stretch down the whole side of your body. Even in the lats. And because it perfectly opens up the shoulders like this is a fantastic movement for throwing, for martial arts, especially something like jiu-jitsu where you're also getting that nice pelvic thrust. So if you want to start incorporating the crab into your routine, then you can use these isometric holds as part of a mobility routine. You can use it as part of a cool down. I recommend that for a warm-up, you instead use something like the hip thrust that we looked at, or maybe the slightly more relaxed version, the crab walks, because this way you're not maintaining a static stretch, it's more of a moving, dynamic stretch, and this is just a really nice way to ease into that movement and to really activate the glutes in a really safe way. If you want to start using those isometric holds, then I recommend that you start with a target that's achievable for you, 20-30 seconds. Do this 3 times and then perform it maybe 3 times a week. You can then build up to a minute or longer and start to really see that difference. And just go easy with it. Remember, it's a marathon and not a sprint. So that's the crab pose, the crab reach, the crab toe touch. What do you think? Is it an exercise that you already use? Is it one you're going to start incorporating into your training? And if not, what exercises do you use to combat the detrimental effects of sitting for long periods? Let me know if there are any other exercises you'd like me to highlight in the comments down below. If you want a training program that looks at restoring functional movement and takes you beyond that to super functional performance, incorporating everything from strength to mobility to cardio, explosiveness, then check out my ebook and training program that comes with over 2 hours of instructional video called Super Functional Training 2.0, the Protein Performance System. I'll put a link to that in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and bye for now.